around the nation. TYD Nation, Jeff Walder here with you. Welcome to the show. Happy New Year. It's 2020. I just avoided saying, so there's a joke where a lot of people really wanted to see Barbara Walters say, I'm Barbara Walters, this is 2020. I almost said that. I'm obviously not Barbara Walters, but that is still a funny joke. And unfortunately, we did not get to see that. But anyway, welcome to the show, guys. We're going to have a fun day. I just realized that basically, like, if you guys are on Twitter, you should definitely give me a follow. It's at Jeff's Politics. I have the handle of Corn Pop's Record Player. Just to give you a tasty taste of my Twitter antics. I basically shit post there all the time. Way different than what you get from me on the show. And I was thinking, imagine if I ran my show like I did a Twitter account. Oh, that'd be hilarious. But probably not great, because you guys come to me, of course, for well-researched political commentary and not shit posting. But if you are interested, go to my Twitter account, Jeff's Politics. Let's grow that. All right. So anyway, got a lot of news today. We're going to focus a lot on Donald Trump. We got quite a few stories on that, including Trump's hypocrisy on undocumented labor. That's really interesting. We also have Kim Jong-un and some possible nuclear testing going on, or at least some announcements. We've got Donald Trump's response to that. And then we have how the stock market is actually worse than Obama. So that's a story that is enraging to Donald Trump. So we have that. We also have police acting very poorly. We've got two different stories related to that. But first, we've got a little bit of breaking news. We have Julian Castro, Obama's former HUD secretary, has officially dropped out of the 2020 race. Again, before Iowa and New Hampshire, before the voting even began, citing poll numbers and, of course, as usual, fundraising difficulties. We just finished another quarter of fundraising. And so you're not going to be surprised that Bernie Sanders has crushed donations. I think he raised about $35 million in this quarter. That's better than everyone else. And also had 5 million donations. Here comes Bernie Sanders with a chair. Yes, he's raising a lot of money. And of course, now the media is actually starting to take him a little bit more seriously. And then come bitter centrists with their salty tears. So I was actually going to prepare that story, but I need a little bit more time to gather the correct responses to this. Enough responses, I should say, to this to kind of illustrate how the establishment is having a meltdown over this, even going so far as saying, it turns out donations not so good. It doesn't really matter how much money you make or how much you raise. It's amazing. But yes, Bernie Sanders crushing in fundraising. But then you have Julian Castro. So no, Julian Castro, my opinion on him is that he was actually one of the less, the people I guess I was less against than any other candidate. Because, Klobuchar, of course, is super moderate, super milquetoast. And we have, Cory Booker, who's, super Wall Street. He's a nice guy, but a super, super Wall Street. But here you had, of course, Julian Castro, who actually had some pretty good stuff on police brutality, of course, and immigration. So, those were great ideas. Good to have his input. Strong plans on that. Could have been, he was actually fairly progressive. It could have been a lot better when he was HUD secretary. But I think the race is a little bit diminished. Why is he gone and John Delaney still here? Like, literally, what has Delaney bring to the table, other than, look, if you check out his Twitter account, he's got some guns. Better call for some gun control because Delaney's ripped. But other than that, what does he even bring to the table? He's not even involved in any of the debates or anything like that. I don't know why he's still running. I don't know. But anyway, hey, that's what we've got here. So there's the breaking news today. Again, I hope everybody had a great and happy New Year's Eve. And hey, we're back. We got another year of fantastic shows and political commentary. So please like and share the stream. And let's dive right into it. All right. Now, if it's one thing that the Trump family hates, is undocumented immigrants taking up good old American jobs. Those great jobs that for some reason end up going to undocumented immigrants while Americans sit in poverty. Well, we can't have that, right? Now, this is why Trump Winery, which is a vineyard in rural Virginia run by President Donald Trump's son, Eric Trump, recently fired a group of undocumented workers, some of which who had ended up somehow working there for over a decade. Now, this is not a story that has just happened. Or I'm sorry, that has happened years ago. This story just happened, right? He just fired these people at the end of the year. Now, okay, maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't know those people had worked here. I don't know. Let's see. We've got some quotes here, and it gets worse because this is from both the New York Times and the Washington Post. They claimed the firings had just came right after this year's annual harvest. Oh, so they just got done with the grapes, and then now, since they don't need the help anymore, well, that's when they got rid of these people. In fact, Omar Miranda, who was a tractor driver from Honduras, who was among the unauthorized workers who were fired this week, said, quote, "They didn't make this decision in the summer because they needed us a lot then." Yes, they needed us a lot. You mean to say that the Trump family used a group of people for their labor, and then when they didn't need them anymore, then they fired them? No, how completely uncharacteristic of wealthy conservatives. But wait, you might say, look, that's not fair to go after Donald Trump. I mean, he's not running his business. Eric Trump's running the business. And look, Eric does not talk to his dad about his businesses, right? Well, if you believe that, you're also the same kind of person who also believes that Hunter Biden did not talk to Joe Biden when he was on the gas board of Burisma. Of course they talk to each other. Of course they all know about it. It's ridiculous. And look, if you do believe that, again, then you obviously don't know how these people work. Now, let me give you another quote here from an immigration lawyer who's advising Miranda. She said, quote, "Donald Trump has known about these workers for months. He waits until the fields are tended, the grapes picked, wine made. He then discards them like a used paper bag. Happy New Year, you're fired." Well, again, you're fired is, where have we heard that before from a Trump? Oh, right. An entire show called The Apprentice dedicated to firing people. Okay. Anyway, so obviously, complete and total hypocrisy. Oh, hey, we need your labor for the harvest, so we're going to keep you on until that's done. But then when it's done, gone. Now, my question is, why didn't you hire American? I mean, your administration is all about hire American, buy American, right? Well, there actually is a good answer that's not related to the Trumps, and that it involves most Americans actually not wanting to do those jobs. And so that's the problem here. Now, let me give you a bit of a personal anecdote, right? So when I was real young, when I was in my teens, right, one of my first jobs was picking strawberries in the summer alongside what I assumed were many undocumented workers. I was about 16, right, in the summer. So now I did that job, and let me tell you, it was hard, hot, backbreaking work. And the pay was terrible. There's no minimum wage at that job. Okay. So let me just let you know that. So my buddy and I, who went to do that job together, and his girlfriend, we lasted about a week. Tough job, right? And we made about enough to split a pizza together at Pizza Hut. That's how low the pay actually is. And this was after having to fight the owner for our pay, who would refer to us as those kinds of people. What does she even mean by that? What does she mean by that? There's a reason that Americans don't do those jobs. Okay. And yet here in this case, of course, I saw people, whose families didn't speak English, right? And they worked their asses off in these terrible, hot, hard conditions. If you were to see that, if you were to watch them work, actually watch them work, I think it would remove any doubt you would have about their work ethic and their willingness to work. And yet, of course, Trump and a lot of Republicans, they call them terrible. Oh, they're criminals. They're rapists. They're lazy. No. Donald Trump's lazy. Trump has never worked a goddamn day in his life. Never picked berries. Never hauled concrete. Never worked a day on a factory line. He's not a working class person, and he has never understood the working class. The only thing he's been good at is marketing, duping people who don't have a lot of time, right? People who are working 2 or more jobs, people who are busy raising their families. They hear something from Donald Trump. Oh, that guy's a celebrity. He must know what he's talking about. Oh, he's rich. He must know what he's talking about. Not knowing that in reality, this man has coasted off his daddy, who was a competent and good businessman, despite being an incredible racist. Coasted off this name, coasted off the Trump brand. If he had invested all the money that he had received from his parents in a CD for 30 years, he would be richer than he is now. Allegedly now, because of course we can't actually see how much money he has because he hides his tax returns. So, but look, who Trump is. Trump, and this is why I'm so frustrated at people, members of the working class who love Donald Trump, right? He is the elite. He's not one of us. He's not a worker. He's the boss's son that comes in and acts like he knows everything. That's who Trump is. We all know that guy. He's cocky, thinks he knows better than the workers on the floor, and basically walks around telling people how to do their job and then goes and sits on his ass. We all know that guy. We know that asshole. And look, it used to be everybody hated that guy. Now, apparently, they look at him, and a lot of people in the working class look at him and go, no, he's my guy. I love that guy. What are you doing? What are you doing? Look, at least in this election, unlike last time, by the way, because if you voted for Trump last time, and it's because, man, I cannot stomach Hillary Clinton. I don't agree with you. I also can't stomach Hillary Clinton, but I don't agree with your vote, right? But at the same time, I get it. I get it. At least this time, though, what's different than this time or than last time is we actually do have a candidate in the primary that is for the working class. And that candidate's Bernie Sanders. All right. So one more thing here. This is not the first time that the Trump family had gotten in trouble for hiring undocumented immigrants. Last year, there were reports of Trump hotels, golf courses, and other businesses hiring undocumented workers. Yes, this is still during the Trump administration, while they are also trying to crack down on undocumented immigrants. I mean, it's amazing, right? And you don't think that he knows about this? Of course he knows about this. It's his businesses. The one thing that he does care about is making money for the Trump organization. They all knew, but they get their hands caught in the cookie jar and they say, oh no, how could this happen? Undocumented immigrants at our company? No. Can't help that. Nope. Get rid of them. Get rid of them all. Truth is, of course, Donald Trump has really benefited from undocumented labor for his entire career. He is a complete and total hypocrite on this issue. And he uses the same people that he denigrates in order to save a buck at his own businesses. And that, I can guarantee, is who the Trumps really are. Let's go to the stock market. So President Trump loves to use the stock market as a way to brag about his job in the White House. The best economy ever, right? So that combines with the boast of lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, about 3%. So now he uses both of those arguments as a way to say that, how dare you impeach me, right? How dare you impeach me when the economy is doing so great under my leadership? You have no choice but to vote for me in 2020 if you want a good economy, because the Democrats will destroy it. It's funny because during the Obama years is when the economy started getting decent, right? And that continued into the Trump era, which you have, of course, the major signature legislation that Trump had was tax cuts for the rich that, as I've shown in previous segments, haven't really done a whole lot except for make rich people even more rich. So now his arguments don't make a whole lot of sense when you look at some of the details. So let me give you the details. Axios recently reported that the S&P has actually increased. That's the S&P 500. It's one of the stock market indicators, has increased by about 42% under the Trump administration. So, okay, well, that's good for investors. It's good for people with 401ks, right? However, there's the issue that about half or less of all Americans have a 401k, right? And there's another half of Americans, presumably the ones that don't have 401ks, that work in low-wage jobs. So there's a lot of average Americans that are actually not reaping the benefits of Donald Trump's economy. Not even AT&T workers. You guys remember when the Trump tax cuts came into effect, you had AT&T coming out there and saying, well, because of these tax cuts, because we saved so much money, that now we are going to give our employees a $1,000 bonus. Okay. So now they said, we're doing really well. We're gonna give those bonuses. Now it's being reported that around 3,000 workers are being laid off, being fired after having to train foreign replacements. But hey, look, the stock market's doing better, right? And I've also done a lot of reports on these different, for example, Carrier laying people off, Harley Davidson laying people off, other companies that touted the Trump tax cuts laying people off. So is it really the best economy ever? Again, when half of all Americans work low-wage jobs and you have manufacturing that has continued to shrink, partly also because of the trade war with China that we are not in any position to really win on. And really, what does winning look like at this point? Because of the damage that has happened to the Midwest, to a lot of farmers, and to a lot of manufacturers. Again, the jobs that are replacing them, and we are in a job boom, happen to be low-wage service jobs, as we are now in a service-based economy in which wages, of course, are way too low to supplement people's middle-class lifestyle. So now, but you could still say, hey, the stock market's still doing better than ever. Well, you could say that, and it depends on the metric, right? So now Trump wants to prove that he's a better economic steward than anyone else based on the rise of the stock market during his term, which you can look at the facts. That's undeniable. You have had a 42% rise in the S&P 500. Now, you've also had a lot of strange dips in the stock market after some of Donald Trump's tweets, but have also rebounded. But let me go to an analysis here that shows that the gains under Trump for the stock market have actually lagged, or they actually do lag under former presidents George H.W. Bush and Barack Obama. Now, Barack Obama had the benefit of having a stock market crash at the end of George W. Bush's term that he had to rebound from. So financial crisis, and then you had a rebound of stocks. So stock market growth was actually even better under Obama, even though under Trump, we've had even more highs. So now, for me, I don't necessarily like to use the stock market as an indicator of economic growth. But if you're going to look at raw numbers, you're going to look at raw growth, well, then you would have to concede that George H.W. Bush and Barack Obama just kicked Trump's ass when it came to stock market growth. It's all in the numbers. It's facts. Now, if you want to look at that alone, like I said, Bush and Obama kicked his ass, but that's one. But there's another economic metric that Trump excels at, though, compared to Bush and Obama, and that's increasing poverty. So let me give you some examples of that, right? So now the poverty rate, according to a state analysis of U.S. Census Bureau county estimates that was released last month, says that the poverty rate actually grew in 30% of counties between 2016 and 2018. Now that is, again, 2016, Trump became president. 2018, Trump's still president. As a lot of Trump supporters love to point out, he's your president. Okay, well, he's your president. And in that time, the poverty rate grew in 30% of counties in the country. Now, the current poverty rate, by the way, is the percentage of people in households earning less than $25,750 for a family of four. I think that poverty threshold is actually BS because it should actually be higher, right? Because look, there are people making $30,000, $40,000 that still cannot survive. But anyway, most of the, and this is the ironic part about that analysis, most of the biggest increases of poverty were in both rural and southern areas. Now, there's two different counties that were looked at by Huffington Post, and that's Republican Carter County, Kentucky, right? So it's 97% white, votes solidly Republican. But you also had Democratic-controlled Bullitt County, Alabama. So both of them, respectively, are first and second when it comes to the increase of poverty in those counties. Now, in Bullitt, for example, the poverty rate went up about 10 points between 2016 and 2018 to 42.5%. Now, Bullock is minority, mostly populated by minorities, African Americans. So now the median income after inflation also dropped 18% to just $29,267. So that's Bullitt County, right? Now, Carter County also pretty terrible when it came to those numbers as well. So how about that economy, right? But hey, look, the stock market's doing really, really well. And I'm sure those increases will help Carter County and Bullitt County. Now, Carter County is really important that I mentioned ATT back there because guess what? Guess what the main employer in that area is? AT&T. There's a call center, actually, a customer service center, and there's a meat processing plant. So those are the jobs if you live in Carter County. So yeah, the Trump economy, not so good for a lot of people, especially the poorest of the poor, and in southern rural states. Now, it's been pretty good for the rich, though. Again, we spent about $1.5 trillion in tax cuts for the very wealthy. These corporations got huge tax cuts and continue to have their loopholes. Their loopholes were not closed. However, loopholes were closed on the middle class. The SALT deduction has been eliminated, hurting people in, of course, New York and LA. Bit of a punishment for people living in the more, what's considered to be the more liberal states. So congratulations on that, right? So look, the Trump economy, again, not great, but I'm not going to let Obama slide as well, because let's be fair, right? Under President Obama, the rich also did really well, and yet the poor stagnated. And look, there's only so much that a president can do to influence jobs in the economy, right? And again, the signature legislation for Donald Trump was the tax cuts. But remember, that was also pushed through by the Republican Congress and then signed into law by Donald Trump. And so Congress does make a lot of those decisions. And look, and as far as it goes to, Carter County, Kentucky, and Bullitt County, Alabama, some of those decisions are are locally made as well. So let's be fair about that. Anyway, what we need to do is to have a better metric when it comes to jobs and economic performance. I say we look at the quality of jobs and not just how many jobs are created. Because again, those job numbers, as I've said before, are basically crap. You can't really tell a whole lot from them because they exclude so many different things. Again, they exclude the quality of the jobs, the pay of the jobs, as well as how many people have stopped looking for jobs because they have given up, because they can't find something that they're able to live off of in some of these areas. And so, yes, look at the quality, look at the worker pay. And when you do look at that, just like we had under Obama, we're also seeing a lot of service sector jobs that are low wage. You also have pay that is stagnant, benefits that are shrinking, increasing costs of healthcare that are eating up more people's paychecks. And so this is all happening while the rich pay a lower effective rate than the middle class. So that's a huge, huge problem. You are getting ripped off while Trump and his donors make even more money. So remember all these different factors when you see economic reports, and especially when you see Donald Trump, yelling about how great his economy is and why that shouldn't lead to him being, or why that should prevent him from being impeached. All right. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We've got more stories for you guys, including Kim Jong-un, and then police behaving badly. So we'll do that. We're also going to thank some patrons, take some super chats if there are any, read a few comments, and do all that fun stuff. So give me a few minutes. We'll be back. We'll have more show for you guys. So just stay right here around the nation.
Mike Pounds.
Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TWT Nation. Jeff Fuller here with you. Okay, so I've got quite a few. I got a few comments. I noticed some things going on in the chat. So that's fun. People having conversations. It's good. I want people to have open, honest conversations with each other. So I'm going to go first before I get to some of the comments that I picked out. I do want to thank some patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation. I want to thank Elaine Eustache and Carmen Ambries. So thank you, patreon.com/TYTNation. Thank you for supporting independent progressive media. Couldn't do this show without you guys and gals. And then also, I want to thank William Wirch and David Burns for being channel members. You can become a channel member by hitting the join button below. All right, so let's go and read a couple of comments here, member comments. Ann Anderson says, Trump in 4 years has done more damage to America than I thought possible. Well, look, there was a reason that I kept saying, prepare for impact, right? Brace for impact. Iceberg dead ahead. Because that's exactly what happened. And then Sarge Tech says, the economy is only great for the rich, like Trump and his cronies. We middle-class slobs are the only ones who vote these idiots in office. A revolution is needed. Yeah, we do need the middle class, not just the middle class, because everybody focuses too much on the middle class. What we need is the poor and working class, too. Like, again, half of all Americans work at low-wage jobs. These corporations don't care about us. Most of the politicians don't care about us. They only care about who, the politicians care about who pads their pockets, and the corporations only care about return on investment, right? And so we get left out, the working class and the poor, we get left out of a lot of conversations. Middle class, shrinking as it is, still does better than we do, and has done better historically, and it gets focused on way too much. What we need is people that earn less than $25,000 a year for a family of four. We need those people to get out and to get involved. What's difficult for them is, and as much as they might want to, can't. They have families, bills, 2 or 3 jobs. Those are the people we need to focus on, and those are the people we need to help ultimately. All right. So those are the comments. And again, there's apparently a lot going on here in the chat. Look, a lot of people, it's amazing to me seeing some of the comments that people can take every issue, which is nuanced and difficult, and blame it just on one thing. Immigrants. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, because in reality, most of the problems have a multitude of different issues. One of them, most importantly, being money in politics that influences everything else. Money in politics leads to buying of politicians. Buying of politicians leads to, I don't know. Actually, I do know. Leads to laws being drafted in favor of not only the politicians, but the corporations that fund them as well. And of course, that leads to things like poverty, leads to things like lack of representation, leads to apathy, leads to all of this different stuff. And so you have a lot of these different problems, I guess, created by, and I'll go back and amend what I said, that, there is one problem that supersedes everything, is money in politics and corporate control of the government. And so it's not the immigrants. In reality, the immigrants are used and exploited by these same corporations that use and exploit us. There's a reason that these companies, by the way, don't get in trouble. Going back to the Trump Winery, for example, right? Why did the Trump Winery not get fined? Why did they not get in trouble for having employed undocumented immigrants? We all know it. They fired those undocumented immigrants. Why did they not get in trouble? Why does no company, corporation get fined or in trouble for hiring undocumented immigrants? Tell me that. Why? It's because they don't actually care about undocumented immigrants working at these corporations, right? No, they're only pointing them out so they can gaslight America. They can gaslight us and say, well, that's why your wages are low. No, that's not why our wages are low. Our wages are low because corporations don't want to pay anymore. And they bought the politicians who will not raise the minimum wage. Pointing at one, like I said, pointing at the most marginalized, most powerless group of people does not help anything. No. And besides, without undocumented immigrants, things would actually cost a lot more. I don't know if you guys probably know the stories of places that cannot hire enough Americans to work the fields. Not that they're not, that they don't pay. Some of these farmers were offering $15 an hour for Americans to go work those fields. They refused to do so. And so you can't really, if you really want to point the finger at us for having undocumented immigrant, or if you want to point the finger at somebody for, the problem of undocumented immigrants, it's us. Especially what we did to corn by subsidizing the crap out of it and making it so that corn from Mexico is essentially worthless. Again, it's so simple. But here's the thing. They pointed that one group of people and blame them for all the problems because it's simple, because it's easy to do without examining the real villains in the issue. Those people are bad. Really? Are they? They're all bad? All of them? Every single one of them? It's funny because I've seen a lot of other stories too about small townships and that have an undocumented person that owns a store in that area getting deported. And all these Trump supporters go out and say, oh, no, don't deport him. No, protect him. I know somebody in my personal life that is like, oh my God, we just found out this guy's a undocumented immigrant and he's being deported. You need to stop him because he's a good guy. He's one of the greatest guys. Please don't deport him. Oh, wait a minute. You voted for that. You wanted that to happen. Well, now it's happening to somebody that you like, and now you're suddenly not in favor of it anymore. That's funny. Hypocrisy at its finest. Okay. All right. So let's get into more stories because we're running out of time. I could go on about that. I could. All right. Now, President Trump is not worried about Kim Jong-un testing more nuclear weapons. In fact, according to HuffPost, on New Year's Eve, Kim Jong-un said that this is after Kim Jong-un said that his country is developing a new strategic weapon, which sounds not good, and could soon resume testing nuclear weapons and long-range ballistic missiles. Yes, I just said not good. Very bad. Because it is bad to develop even more nuclear weapons and the capability of launching them across the ocean. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, not good. Very bad. Now, Kim, as reported by Korean Central News Agency, it's a propaganda arm of the Korean government, said on Wednesday, local time, that Un no longer felt obliged to stick to a self-imposed moratorium on nuclear and long-range missile testing, despite the fact that it was an agreement with President Trump. He said that, quote, he was no longer unilaterally bound to the commitment any longer. Yikes. Trump's response was, well, he won't because he likes me. Asked about Kim's rhetoric at a New Year's Eve bash held at Mar-a-Lago, on Tuesday, the president said that he and Kim get along. Quote, he likes me, I like him, we get along. Remember, the same person who said that he is in love with Kim Jong-un, actual quote, he's praised him on several accounts, which is funny because Kim Jong-un is a brutal dictator, brutal communist dictator, by the way. I don't know if he got that last part. I mean, you're supposed to be against communism, but loves the communist leader of North Korea. Says, oh, yeah, he took over a country at 31. There's not many people that could do that. Really? Okay, anyway. Look, he's also had family members executed in horrific ways. I think there was an uncle at least according to North Korean state media, which again is a propaganda arm, so might not be true. But there's an uncle that was allegedly executed via anti-aircraft gun. The guy was literally obliterated. There's nothing left of him. Yikes. But there's more. In this quote here, he said he did sign a contract, meaning Kim Jong-un. He did sign an agreement talking about denuclearization that was done in Singapore. And I think he's a man of his word. So we're going to find out. But I think he's a man of his word. He didn't sign a contract. He signed a non-binding thing that I can't even say that it's an agreement. More of like, oh, yeah, I guess I won't develop nuclear weapon or test any more nuclear weapons or develop more ballistic missiles to carry those, nuclear weapons. Well, that was it. That was a crowning achievement of Trump's diplomacy in North Korea. He got Kim to sign some sort of symbolic, I guess maybe I'll do this, but probably not. And guess what? Just like we said, that and look, I'm somebody that wants Trump to be successful when it comes to diplomacy because I don't want a war with North Korea. I also don't want a war with Iran or any other ridiculous war in the Middle East, but we seem to be edging closer and closer to that, unfortunately. And so now with this new North Korea escalation, oh boy, right? Now Trump, of course, at least he's saying, well, I'm not going to go to war with North Korea because again, that's the last thing that we want. But at the same time, we are no closer to denuclearization than we were before. So what are you doing out there? But anyway, going back to what Trump was saying, he's a man of his word. Oh, well, I trust him and I like him. And I love him. We wrote love letters back and forth to each other. Oh, my God. So our president is trusting a brutal communist dictator because he said nice things about him and signed a sort of agreement to do nothing. So that's the situation here. Okay, wow. Now, at this point, I don't know who's more dangerous, right, to the country. Kim Jong-un, who, again, brutal communist dictator, or President Trump, who's an idiot and not a very smart person. And again, I'm not saying that, like, okay, maybe I am saying that. Yeah, I'm definitely saying he's an idiot, but he could have done so much better because at least his rhetoric on foreign policy was less disastrous than other Republicans, right? For example, I don't know if it was Lindsey Graham. Look, Lindsey Graham's never met a war he didn't like. John McCain never met a war he didn't like. And so you've got these, neocons, these war hawks in the Republican Party. Mike Pompeo, who was part of Donald Trump's cabinet, also incredible warmonger, right? Now, thankfully, at least none of them have really got that idea into Donald Trump's head of let's attack North Korea. But it's not like they probably haven't tried on this. But as far as Trump goes, when it comes to his diplomacy, the problem is that you have you have these leaders that he is, been really, really maybe a little too friendly with, right? A little too conciliatory with. People like Duterte, people like Jair Bolsonaro. There's a literal fascist. And then, of course, communist dictator Kim Jong-un. They know how to play him. They know how to play him because he's not smart. And again, I agree with the goal. Yes, let's denuclearize North Korea. I'm in favor of this. But it's very clear at this point, Kim Jong-un is not going to do that. He's going to continue to test out new weapons and then rub it in our face that he doesn't give a damn about any agreement we have with Trump. And the worst part is, what do you do about it? And that's the question, right? Obviously, we can't go to war. I don't want to. That would be an epic disaster. We do need more diplomacy. We do need an actual agreement. And we do need to reduce the amount of nuclear weapons in the world. But I don't know how you do that. And certainly, I don't think Trump knows how to do that either. And as far as, look, what helps and what doesn't help, well, look, it's not helping when you shrug them, boasting of new weapons and doing testing by also saying how much you love them and how much you trust them. I wouldn't start with that. But I also wouldn't start with Rocket Man. And so, diplomacy is one of those things where you actually need a great understanding of who you're negotiating with, including past agreements, the past times that they might have reneged on that agreement, their negotiating style, what would work and what might not work to try to pressure them into an agreement. All that stuff would be incredibly good to know if you're going to negotiate. Trump did none of that. In fact, he boasted about not needing to be prepared for anything because he would know if he could trust Kim Jong-un within the first couple of minutes of knowing him. This is who we have negotiating on behalf of the United States. It's amazing we are not in a war already. Okay, Jesus. So let's switch gears, right? Okay. A police officer in Kansas has resigned, or has more likely been fired, after falsely accusing workers at a local McDonald's of writing a slur against police on the officer's coffee cup. So now this officer, who's unnamed, had apparently written, and you can see it in the sidebar, but let me give you a bigger picture on this one. Wrote, and you can see there's an expletive that is crossed out. But yeah, that's a slur against police, right? So now this officer had apparently made a complaint about this to fellow officers, and that prompted Police Chief Brian Hornaday to share the video on Facebook, share the photo on Facebook, alongside a very angry post, understandably. So now think about this, right? So the officer writes a slur on a coffee cup, takes a photo. It ends up getting shared on social media, goes viral, and now you have an investigation into the employees at that particular McDonald's. So now when that happens, when news comes out, well, people are obviously going to be angry at those workers at McDonald's, right? And angry at that McDonald's. So they're going to face a lot of pushback. They're going to face a lot of possible threats of violence, etc., right? So already this is an absolute disaster. And all of it happened because a police officer decided that he was going to put out literal fake news. Look, that's what it is, right? So now what happened is they did an investigation and they found surveillance footage. The surveillance footage found that this did not happen, that no one had written that slur on a coffee cup. So now once they realized what this was, that it was a hoax, Chief Hornaday obviously had to issue an immediate response or apology to McDonald's. And I don't know if that actually includes the workers themselves, really, who should be targeted for that apology. So now he said, this is Hornaday, McDonald's had nothing to do whatsoever with writing the insult on that cup. This was completely and solely fabricated by a Harrington police officer who is no longer employed with our agency. Hornaday also said that the actions are, quote, in no way reflective of the values or character of the typical Harrington police officer, noting that police officer had only served for about 2 months. So this cop was a former military police officer, right? Now, this man this person, I should say, is unnamed, and had said, according to Hornaday, had told him that this was a joke. Oh, funny joke. Great. Fantastic. Well, okay, if it's a joke, then why did you complain about it? I mean, if you're joking with your superior officer, right, with the chief of police. Now, look, I got a cup right here, right? So why didn't you say, oh, by the way, I'm just joking that I actually wrote this. Why would you not do that? Why would you let it continue and blow up to the point of where it was at? I don't get it. I don't. So you know what? I don't actually believe it, right? And look, people's jobs and maybe even their lives were threatened over this. So it just seems super ridiculous, right? And it's a good thing there was that surveillance footage, or else who knows where this would have went, right? Would these employees have lost their jobs? It's very possible. And look, because when you put a police officer's word against a regular person's word, who are you going to believe? That person says, "No, I didn't write that on the cup," and that officer, trying to save face, might lie about it if there's no surveillance footage and say, "Well, no, you wrote it. Somebody wrote it. Somebody should get in trouble for this, and it's not going to be me." So I just think what would have happened if there was an actual proof, actual evidence, right? And look, I think officers, I look, cops are respected for a reason, right? And they're elevated for a reason, and they're believed of other people for a reason. This is why we need to have high standards for cops. We place as a society a lot of faith in police, right? So when they do things like this and all the other disastrous things, right? For example, lying to people about arrests, shooting unarmed people. We've seen officers plant guns on people or tasers on people who are shot in the back. When they do all this terrible stuff, plant drugs, do arrest quotas, abuse their power, that hurts all of us, not just the police. So yes, we need way higher standards for who actually becomes a police officer, right? And we need higher standards when it comes to training and crackdown. And you know what? I'm glad this guy was fired or forced to resign, whatever you want to call it. He's no longer on the force. And he should be, I think, barred for, lying and making things up. Because that is not what we want our police officers to do. They should be held to a much, much higher standard because of the authority that we give them. All right. So let's get one more story in here real quick. And again, it's police behaving badly. All right, hold on here. All right. Moving on here. Two police officers in Alabama have faced massive backlash after posting a homeless quilt on Facebook. So now let me show you that supposed quilt here. That is not it for some reason. I should have it. All right, that's odd. There it is. So you can see Preston McGraw and Alexandre Olivier, that's two officers with the Mobile Police Department in Alabama, posing with what they called a homeless quilt made up of confiscated signs from homeless individuals. Now the post read, "Want to wish everybody in the 4th Precinct a Merry Christmas, especially our captain. Hope you enjoy our homeless quilt. Sincerely, Panhandler Patrol." Disgusting. Wow. Now, again, this got a lot of pushback on social media, so let me give you some examples of that. Goth Miss Krampus says, "Americans are insanely evil." Well, some people definitely are. Aaron Sinek said, "Homeless quote made by the Panhandler Patrol. The lack of empathy and care is stunning and disgusting." Mark Tropolis said, "This is not a lack of empathy or care. This is state-sanctioned violence, and these are the trophies of their conquests." So, man, they are not mincing words there. Eric Q. Kendall says, "Every one of those signs are a sign from somebody in a desperate situation. They have nothing, and it's not a joke." And so let me back that up, right? So in Alabama alone, there's an estimated nearly 3,500 homeless individuals as of 2018. 540 of those, according to the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, are individuals experiencing chronic homelessness. So think about that, right? So you had roughly about 3,000 people who at some point in their lives were homeless, and about a little over 500 who suffer from chronic homelessness. So these are the people that these officers think is okay to make fun of, to mock, and to denigrate on social media publicly. Look, this is gross. Super, super gross. Super unprofessional as well. For your police officer, especially. Look, these people should not be, laughed at or made light of, right? And it's a situation that affects a lot of Americans who are in a very precarious position. So it's absolutely gross. Now, Mobile Police Department Chief Lawrence Batiste responded to this on Monday. He said, "As a police department entrusted with serving and protecting our community, we offer our sincerest apology for the insensitive gesture of a Facebook post by two of our officers where they are holding up a homeless quilt made up of panhandling signs. Although we do not condone panhandling and must enforce the city ordinances that limit panhandling," and I'll get to that later, "it is never our intent or desire as a police department to make light of those who find themselves in a homeless state. Rather, our position has always been to partner with our community service providers to help those faced with homelessness with hope to improve their quality of life." Well, so remember how I said keep that in mind, how, their ordinances, right? Now, so they say that, but what are the lawmakers actually doing? Well, they're criminalizing homelessness and using police officers, of course, to clear the streets of homeless. So now their situation is not to help the homeless people, right? No, their orders are to get the homeless people off the streets so it looks better. Not as in help the homeless people get homes so they can be more successful. Okay. And look, what they're doing law-wise is making it so people can't sleep on benches or sidewalks, when in reality, of course, I think we should house the homeless. And I know, like, you might think it's a really crazy idea, but we have more empty homes than we have homeless people in this country. And studies have shown that it's actually cheaper to house homeless people than put them in jail, right? And look, making homelessness criminalizing it, does not solve the underlying issues. Those issues being, of course, financial instability, expensive rent, gentrification, low wages, substance abuse, lack of access to mental health care for the poor, many other issues, right? Many other things that actually contribute to this problem of homelessness. But as far as the response to this, what they actually do in Alabama, well, they have laws against so-called aggressive panhandling, right? So now they can be charged with requesting donations from someone standing in line outside of any commercial establishment. So you're outside a store and you ask for money. Well, you're an aggressive panhandler, and you can be charged and you can be arrested and then charged and fined up to $500 or face up to 6 months in jail, which is exactly what we want to do for poor people that have no money, that are begging for money to survive. We're going to charge them $500. That doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like an overdraft fee. Oh, we're going to charge you for being poor. Well, as I said before, poverty charges interest, right? And as far as going to jail, well, that's not a solution either. Again, it costs more to put poor homeless people in jail than it is to actually give them homes. And of course, in jail, well, they're not getting any sort of help at all. And so, look, this is a disgusting situation, right? Now, to kind of wrap up the story of what's going on with these two officers and how the system, of course, is even more disastrous. BuzzFeed News reports that the department has opened an investigation which will determine if any punitive action is necessary. But notes that Macron Olivier remain on duty while the investigation is underway. So they're still out there. They're still doing their thing, right? Now, this gets back to having higher standards for police officers. I mean, I think that they should receive punitive action, because how can you expect these officers to serve the community when it seems like they hate a portion of it? Okay. I mean, the homeless are the most vulnerable and marginalized in society. They need the most help and protection. They are the most at risk. Instead, homeless people get mocked, criminalized, and even assaulted, right? And yet there are people out there that defend those officers, by the way. This is how much as a society we've internalized hating the poor. But consider this. If you're somebody who hates homeless people, there are a lot of homeless veterans in this country. We don't talk about them, do we? But look, there are a lot of people who, physical or mental injuries through, our conflicts overseas that do not get taken care of. And they end up on the streets with, sometimes with invisible illnesses, PTSD, and inability to be able to reintegrate into normal, civil society after being a soldier for so long. These veterans end up on the street. So, and they don't get the help that they need. And so it's terrible that you see laws that criminalize the homeless, and you see laws that don't go to helping the homeless get the help that they need and actually get off the street. Instead, we again seem to take pleasure in causing them even more pain than they already have. So I think these officers are pretty disgusting people. But I think what we really need to pay attention to more and solve more is the system. It's the system that creates this homelessness problem. And we need to go and we need to solve that, as well as hiring officers that are just better people. All right. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Become a subscriber or support us on Patreon, patreon.com/TWATNation, or become a channel member to support us as well. Thank you guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.